were hoping you could tell us about how you got interested in baseball and what led you to playing in Japan.
Well, honey, my father was a baseball player, and my older brother was a baseball player. So I grew up from what all I can remember is 4 or 5 years old, wanting to be a baseball player all my life. That's the way it all started.
And we understand that you joined the Kansas City Athletics in 1955, and then you played for a few American teams. Can you tell us a little bit about your early baseball career in the United States?
Okay, I did sign in 1955, and I did sign with the Athletics, and however, we had a disagreement, and I ended up playing for an independent club my first year, and which was a Class B club. And the next year I went to the Texas League, which was AA. And then the next year in AA again. And then the next year I went to Seattle, which was the Pacific Coast League, AAA. And I played there and had a real good year. And I thought I was going to the big league. They promised me I would, but it didn't happen. So I decided to go to Japan. I had a friend from the States playing in Japan, and he's the one that got me over there.
Can you repeat who that person was? I'm sorry.
Ron Butler. He was a catcher on this ball club that I joined, and he was there a year ahead of me.
And did it excite you when you heard the possibility that you would be playing in Japan?
Yes, I was very much looking forward to it.
When you started playing in Japan, what was your first impression of the country, and what was your first impression of Japanese baseball?
Well, my first impression of the people, they were very, very nice to me, overwhelmingly nice. And when I joined the baseball team, it was a little bit different than we played in the United States, but it was similar enough that I had no problem making an adjustment.
I've read elsewhere that you were a collector of Japanese art. Is that correct?
Well, I was a collector of Japanese baseball items, memorabilia, baseball pictures, and bats and things like that.
And while in Japan, were you interested in collecting objects of different kinds?
Yes, I've always been kind of interested in that. Yes, I have.
And would that be baseball related, or would it be like woodblock prints, or would it be other items?
No, it was all baseball from the Japanese league that I played over there in Japan, and also from my professional career over here in the United States.
Do you have a favorite one of those items that you've collected, or some that when people ask you to see, that's always the one that you share?
Yes, I presume it would be my silver bats for winning the batting championship would probably be my prize, yes.
And as you kind of moved into Japan, can you describe what you felt about the country? And you must have traveled with the team to different parts of Japan, way beyond Tokyo or Osaka. And what was your impression of Japan?
Well, I was very impressed with Japan because of the people and the style of living at first class. We went what you call Western style, which means we didn't sleep on the floor at all. You know, it's just that we had a home, nice home, and we lived in that. We pretty well. We were very happy and had a great 7 years.
I understand you played for the Buffaloes first, and then you played for the Hawks, both in the Kansai area. But what was the specific arrangements that the team gave to you? Say, would that be very different from how Japanese players were being treated?
I don't know. I would say there were probably a lot more tougher on the Japanese than they were me. They were very very understandable. The Japanese, they were worked a little bit harder on them than they did me. They kind of gave me a freedom of the way it had been over here. The Japanese teams worked out for a long time. They worked out year round, which we didn't do over here at that time.
But in terms of, say, housing, or in terms of, I don't know if the team would give you some compensation, spending money or something, is that, or did the teams give you those kinds of arrangements?
Well, they took care of some of my expenses, yes.
And did you live in an apartment or home?
Oh, we lived in an apartment the first year, and then we got moved into a big home. We lived in Ashia. We rented a home in Ashia, which was one of the top cities in Japan, really. So we were very, very happy.
And may we ask, in Japan, you were known as Bloom instead of Bloomfield. Just curious how that name came about.
Well, they couldn't get Bloomfield on the scoreboard. It was too long. So they asked me, would I like to be named Field or Bloom? I said, Bloom is fine. So I was called Brumu in Japan because, you know, they don't pronounce L. So they use the word R. And they added the U on the end of it. They called me Brumu.
We're wondering if you could talk a little bit about your success as a hitter, winning the batting title, how you were able to achieve that success, what your practice regimen might have been, and kind of maybe what tips coaches gave you along the way.
Well, I think I was finally, you know, you play so many years and you finally hit what you call your peak. And I happened to hit my peak in that year at 32 years of age. And then I followed the following year, I led the league again hitting. And now I'm 33. So then from then on, you kind of start falling down due to your age. So, but I ended up, my last year, I think I hit 297, which wasn't too bad.
But we hear that baseball in Japan is very different from baseball in the United States. And there are many players who go to Japan who don't achieve the kind of success that you have. So we're wondering, you know, what is the secret of, you must have figured out something, right? And so we're just curious how you were able to do it in a very different baseball culture.
I think the main reason you adjust to however well you like things, no matter what it may be. And I really like Japan, my wife and I adjusted to the baseball. I think in regards to how much I liked it there, which made me a better player in everything. It's a mind game, you know.
Was there any particular aspect of the game that took you longer to adjust to?
No, the game is pretty well the same. They did maybe a couple of little things that weren't major. Their pitchers, they use a lot more than they did over here. They would pitch every couple of days maybe, or might pitch every day for a year or two, which never did happen over here. But that was about the only difference, really, pitching, the way they use their pitchers.
Did you change how you prepared to play on any given day when you were over there versus when you played in the minors in the U.S.?
Not at all. I ate at the same time, you know, 3 or 4 hours for a game, all the same. I followed the same routine.
On the question about Japanese pitchers, was their pitching, you know, strategy in general different from what you saw in the US? I mean, did they throw more breaking balls, or do they not throw first pitch strikes, or was there something different?
I think the main big difference was they threw more breaking balls in Japan than they did over here. And I was always a good breaking ball hitter, which made a difference in my success, I'm sure, over there. And they had very good control. They probably had better control, command of the pitches than they did over here in the big leagues.
How about the hitting, the Japanese hitters, your teammates or your rivals? Is their approach at the batter's box different from how American players might approach the batter's box?
I think the Japanese are a little better at trying to hit the ball to all fields instead of our hitters trying to hit home runs and trying to pull the ball all the time. The Japanese were more under control or command of that type of pitching situation.
You mentioned that in Japan they used the pitchers more often. They left them in the games longer. They used them every day. Did you notice that having an effect on the pitchers as much, or do you think they handled that well?
They handled it pretty well. I know some of the pitchers, they had a little shorter career due to overuse, but overall, they built themselves their stamina to be able to do that. And, you know, it's really the mind is so important in this game. So if you think you can do something, you do it longer. And I think the Japanese were prepared to do pitch more often, where our pitchers never were.
While you were in Japan, how did you get along with your teammates at Kintetsu and Nankai? Did you have any favorite teammates? Was there someone you bonded with more than others?
Yes, we had some players that we did associate with other than the game. In fact, one of our best friends played on another ball club. A man named Moriyashi, who played with Braves in our league, but we became very good friends because he was interested in speaking English, learning English, and they lived in the same city we did, Ashia. So we became very good friends. Went to his wedding, and he came over to see me here a couple of times. So yes, he was one of our better friends. And we had another one very close to us. They had the hotel where in Ashia where all the ball players stayed. We got to know him and his wife. But yeah, we had some very good friends.
What about with your managers? Did you always get along with them and other coaches?
I got along with them all very well.
Do managers in Japan have a different way of working with the players compared to the U.S.?
There was a little more discipline applied by the Japanese managers and our managers over here, yes, and everybody.
And in what sense do you see the discipline?
Well, in whatever job they were doing, if they slacked off a little bit, they would be in practice the next day in the morning working on it. You know, things like that, getting the point over what you did wrong and working on it to try to get it over to you. And I think that's why they improved so much. And now we get a lot of them playing the big league baseball over here and doing very successful. Mostly because once you become a success and you see that your country can do the same thing as a player, I think that's what happened.
As an American player, as a foreign player in the team, do managers treat you differently? Do they give you special treatment? Do they treat you equally? I mean, do they have a different approach to coaching you?
No, they didn't. They pretty well, you know, I learned what to do over there and made that adjustment to play whatever way they did, and we got along fine. I never had a disagreement with my managers. Except my last year, I had a little bit, and it wasn't a big deal, but it's something that we don't do over here. And I did get a little upset, said something to him, but we settled it real quick.
Would it be possible to ask what the disagreement was about?
Yes, I'll go ahead and tell you. It was my last part of my career when I had slowed down and I had made an error on the field, and he sent a player out to replace me in the middle of the inning, which we don't do over here. But we call it showing you up. So he came out to replace me, and I sent him back. I said, no, of course, there are people watching, everybody's wondering what's going on. So when I came in, I went to the manager. I said, you know, if you don't want to start me, that's fine. or if you want to take me out after the inning, it's okay, but don't send somebody out in the middle inning. That's what we call showing you up. That's the only problem I ever had in 7 years. That's pretty good.
How about your relationship with other foreign players who are playing in different teams? I'm seeing some real, legendary names. Wally Yonamine might have overlapped with you for a year or two. Daryl Spencer, Roberto Barbon, Don Blazer, Gene Bach, Joe Stanka, some really famous Japanese, league players in the Japanese leagues. Some of the most famous people were not Japanese. So wondering, what your relationship with some of these foreign players were, and any impressions you have about any of these people.
Well, I have two good stories for I think you would enjoy, and your people. Daryl Spencer, I had a problem with because when he played over, he played very hard, and he hurt a couple of guys, and he came to Japan, and we were playing against him, and he came into second base and took our shortstop out pretty rough. And I told him, Daryl, I'll get you one of these days. So I don't know, maybe 3 weeks later, we're playing him again. He was a second baseman, and I had a chance to get him. I went in with a football roll right after him instead of a slide. I didn't get him. I broke 2 ribs, and he didn't get hurt at all. That's the only incident I had with him. Or in Japan with any players, really.
How about some of the other players?
Well, Joe Stanka, I played against. And Joe, I played against the States, and he was pretty good at moving players off the plate, what we call moving them off, and he'd throw inside. And my wife and I had been out their house for dinner, and we happened to be playing them at night. This is another good story for you. And we're playing them at night, and I hit a home run. The next time he drilled me right in the side. And in Japan, the pitcher does that. He bowed. From Joe bowed big time to me, showing off. He didn't really mean that. Making a joke out. And that was the only 2 incidents I ever had with 2 foreigners. And it wasn't an incident. I knew him, and I laughed about it. We went to their house for dinner, they came to our house. So it was baseball. That's it.
So off the field, it seems like you hung out with many of your, I don't know if rivals is the right word, but fellow baseball players. Was that kind of the daily life in Japan?
Oh yes, we lived in Ashio, which is very close to Kobe, and we belonged to a club in Kobe that Americans belong to, foreigners, and all people of the world, Chinese, Russia. At that time, then Russia was a bitter enemy of ours. But we all got along, which proved to all of us, and it had never seen a situation like that. It starts with the government; it's not the people.
Did you get to know Roberto Barbon? I mean, he's from Cuba, isn't he? Which is so interesting.
He's from Cuba, and he happened to be on the wrong side when Castro took over. And he had to leave the country, and he couldn't get back in. Chico lived down the street from us, not too far. We got together often, He was a very nice man, even though we were opponents. Chico was very nice.
U.S.-Japan relations was not always harmonious. I mean, in 1960, there was a major protests, because of the security treaty renewal, and it seemed like the Vietnam War was coming about. And so U.S.-Japan relations at the time seemed to have been sometimes contentious. So I'm just wondering, what was it like to play in that climate? Did you feel that on the baseball field, or was it just a separate kind of, the politics was separate from the game?
Politics was completely separate from the game. I'll tell you a little situation that happened that I felt a little bit uncomfortable. We played ball. We played an all-star game in Hiroshima. And Hiroshima, the ballpark, was built right where the atomic bomb went off. And this was only 15 years after the war, I think. And being in Hiroshima, I felt a little bit uncomfortable. But one of the strangest and most unusual situations in my baseball career, they're playing the national anthem before the game starts. The Japanese band is playing the American album. The American band is playing the Japanese album. And I'm facing the left field fence with the flag was out towards center. But that's on the other side was where the bomb exploded and destroyed everything. That was a little bit of, a feeling, uncomfortable feeling, let's put it that way, that I ever had in Japan.
We noticed that you might have had an incident in a game against Hankyu, and that led to a suspension and a fine. Is that something that you'll be willing to share with us about?
Yes, I'll be happy to share it with you. There was a particular person that came to the games early, and he'd come down to my dugout, and he would yell, "White monkey, go home. White monkey, go home." He even came out early. And this happened about 4 games in a row. And one night, he came down close to the dugout and yelled at me, "White monkey, go home." I lost it, let's put it that way. And I did get in trouble there. And I regretted that more than anything that ever happened with him.
And that was a fan. Was that somebody in the stands?
Yes. As they found out, he wasn't a very desirable person either. So.
Right. Now, at least I get the impression that the fan culture is a little more, I don't know what the right word is, but rowdy might be the word in the Pacific leagues compared to the Central leagues. I don't know if you had observations about the Central League, but do you have any impressions about the Pacific League in general?
Not really. I think both leagues, I played against them both in exhibition. I didn't see any difference in the fan reaction. They were all, they showed a lot of emotion, but I think they're probably more rowdy over there than they were in Japan as far as fans go.
What do you think your favorite interaction with a fan was? Was there one that stood out to you in particular in a positive way?
In a positive way? Gosh, there were so many of them. I don't know. I can't pinpoint one because we had a lot of good experiences that were very memorable and still are. But to pinpoint one, I can't really. Outside of something that happened in baseball, like winning the batting championship, that would be one of the most memorable, actually.
Julie.
But off the field or something like that, I'd have a very difficult time.
How about Julie?
Hmm?
Julie.
Oh, we had a daughter barn there. That was our year before we left. We had a daughter barn in Japan, and then we had the one we already had. She went to school there for seven years. So those were 2 highlights that were for us as well as the children, even though our last one didn't remember it actually being born there just before we left. But that would be a memorable situation, yes.
Would fans stop you on the streets? Do you get into conversations with fans off the diamond? Or is it like, you have a very private life that's not like involving interactions with strangers, if you will?
Oh, no, it'd probably be the same here. You get asked for autographs, the same when you left the ballpark, if somebody recognized you, ask you for an autograph. Oh, yeah.
I know nowadays in the NPB, a lot of you obviously had your nickname, but now a lot of players will have chants or some sort of song that goes along with it. Did you ever get a chant or song from the crowd?
Oh yeah, I got a lot of chants, but probably most of them I didn't understand, so it didn't make any difference. They're Japanese, and I don't know what they said. I'm sure some of them were very good, maybe some of them weren't, but I had no idea.
Did you pick up some Japanese during the time you were there?
Yeah, I learned a little bit enough to how to get something to eat, how to pay the check, you know, like that. And I could, you know, I called it broken. Like I speak Spanish, broken Spanish. I guess that means parts mixing the English and the Japanese together. I spoke enough that I thought to get them to understand, and I would understand most of the time with them.
Did you ever have any challenges communicating with other players or on the diamond because you spoke broken Japanese?
You know what? I did, for some reason we didn't have any problem at all, because in baseball, whether it's in Japan, whether it's over here, it's pretty well played the same way. And if you want to have a long discussion about what you're going to do tonight or something, yes, there's a problem. As long as it's in baseball, no, it was pretty well easy to understand.
Do you
Right.
remember having a particularly tough at bat against a specific pitcher? Any pitcher where you like couldn't crack, you couldn't figure out what they were going to throw at you, and it was really difficult?
Oh, I had several of those. When you play, you have several pitchers, you have difficulty. Yes.
Could you tell us about one of those experiences?
Oh, it was a guy that pitched for the Fukuoka Hawks, and Fukuoka Lions, but not the Hawks, but the Lions, that wore his hat sideways as a pitcher. And for some reason, that bothered me. I had a hard time against him, but he was a left-handed pitcher, and I'm a left-handed hitter. That was part of it. But him wearing that cap sideways, I always seemed like I concentrated on his hat more than seeing the ball. He gave me trouble. That's an incident that's kind of unusual. I don't imagine you'll ever hear that one from a baseball player.
Do you remember the name of the pitcher?
You know what? I cannot remember his name. I should, but too many I played against that I don't remember. But I should remember him because he got me out very easy.
You seem to have hit most pitchers very well, but if you have any other names of pitchers that you remember very strongly.
Yeah, there was one named Koyama that was very difficult, and Kaneda was probably the best I saw, but he was in the other league. I just played against him in spring training games, but he was probably one of the best left-handed pitchers I saw, even though he wasn't in our league, but I did face him a couple of times. And a pitcher for Fukuoka, named Now, was very good. And offhand, there were some others, but I just don't recall right now.
I mean, Kaneda won 400 games. What was so great about him?
I think his mental toughness was number one, but he had good stuff. Don't get me wrong. But he would challenge you. He had good command of his fastball. He had good command of his breaking ball. And that's the success of a pitcher, being able to command his pitches. And he did that very well. Plus, in tough situations, he could pitch out of them. He was just a little bit unusual in that respect of being having all the qualifications and what we call the intangibles to be a success as he was.
How about Inao? I mean, he's also known as a tough pitcher. I mean, he would throw, multiple days in a row, and he just seemed to have the grit. But is there something similar with Kaneda?
Yes, both of them had what we call that mental toughness that makes them be that successful. And he now was that way. He would pitch it inside. He had no fear of maybe your strengths. And he would surprise you, even though as a hitter, you look for the pitcher's weakness or what he might be throwing. But I couldn't figure him out real well. He would come inside on me when I thought he was going outside. He evidently, he had me figured out better than I had him figured out.
How about foreign pitchers? Did you have a chance to hit against Gene Bach?
Yeah, and Gene was in the other league, but again, we played each other in exhibition games and all. And I knew Gene very well. We were very close friends. His wife and my wife and family.
How was he like on the mound? I mean, he's win awards. I mean, he's a very prolific pitcher.
he was just like most pitchers. He had that mental toughness. He had good control of his breaking ball and his fastball.
We see that your time in Japan overlapped a little bit with Murakami, another pioneer of United States and Japan baseball. And we're curious if you remember playing with him or against him. We see that you must have overlapped with him maybe in 1966. So if you have any recollection of playing with him.
Yes, I do. I have a very good experience knowing him as well as facing him one time or two times at bat. Just before he went to the United States, I played against him one game. In fact, somebody sent me a picture of me hitting off of him. And he was a very nice kid. And of course, you know the story when he came over here and how well he did and why he went back to Japan. I think you know that whole story, so I don't need to go into that.
We had a chance to interview him too, and he was saying that he had a fastball and a curveball and a screwball. And it seemed like hitters struggled with the combination of pitches that he had.
Well, he had very control of them. Again, that's the reason he was successful. And that screwball that he threw was what we call a real good two-strike pitch to get the hitter out. He had very good command of it. And he had that mental toughness again, as I mentioned on every picture.
After returning to the U.S., you worked as a scout and a coach. Were there any Japanese players who you thought would have succeeded in the majors in the U.S.? I know at the time or until 1995, Japanese players couldn't come to the U.S. Because of policy regulations. Are there any players that you think would have excelled had that not been the policy?
You know, it all boils down to whether it's in Japan or here. They didn't get the opportunity back then to have a chance to play. So you never know. I'm sure some of those, like they're making it now, more of them are making it now, that's because they're having the opportunity, and they didn't have the opportunity then.
Do you think there's a certain type of player or skill set that excels in Japan, or that leads to certain success in Japan versus the MLB?
Again, I'm going to go back to what I said, the intangibles and being able to feel that you can play here is so important. And I thought probably the best player in Japan to be able to make it, when I was playing there at the time, where two players would be, was my number one man that I thought could come here and play. The first baseman. And Nagashima would be the other one. And there were about 4 or 5 players I thought could have come over here and played. And that was Harimoto and Kaneda and some of those, if they'd had the opportunity. But see, they didn't have the opportunity then that they have now. The clubs work together and make a deal. They didn't do that back then.
What did you think about Harimoto? I mean, he played for the Toei Flyers, and I mean, he would go on to hit 3,000, which is incredible. I mean, what was so great about him?
He was tough and what we call, again, very strong mentally. And he thought he could do anything. And that was, and he could run. He had good running speed. He had the tools, what we call the ability to do what he did in the first place. But he had that little extra that thought he could do anything. I knew him well and talked to him a lot. And he was very interesting to me, the way he felt he could do anything. I never saw many people express it. Sometimes that shows a weakness, but it didn't with him. It wasn't him. I think that was a big part of the success, but he had the ability to do what he did.
Did you overlap with Nomura?
Well, we played together with the Hawks and played against him 5 years. He would be one of my top picks also to come over here and play.
Do you think he was a catcher back then, right?
Right.
So I'm just wondering if the specific challenges that come with that position would not be an obstacle. You have to be able to communicate with your players, and there's might be a slightly different set of challenges for a catcher to succeed in a different baseball culture. Do you think that would have been a problem for
to me
Nomura?
to answer that, we had an American catcher go over there and didn't do well because he could not make the adjustment with the Japanese style of pitching. Nomura made that adjustment with the American pitcher. So now, why is it he can do it and the other one? I think he's smarter would be one reason. And
can you tell us a little bit about your career after playing in Japan? We understand that you were a scout for a while, but was that kind of your main line of work?
Yes. When San Diego Padres became the expansion team, I had played for the general manager that was there, and he asked me if I'd scout, and I said I'd be happy to because I wasn't happy outside of baseball at 1 year or 2 years. And so I went to work as a scout for him. I scouted for 4 years, and then they made me the hitting coach, and I coached for them. And then I went with the Chicago Cubs as a coach for 4 years after that. And then I went with the Yankees as a scout, what we call a cross-checker, and a special assignment scout. So I was in scouting for 33 years. I played for 16, counting 2 years of professional softball, and then 32 years scouting and 5 years coaching for 51 years total in pro ball.
When you think about your experience coaching, were you bringing tips and things that you had learned in your time playing in Japan back over to the US? Or were the games kind of different, so you had to separate those two methods of coaching?
You know what? I don't think there's that much difference as far as, again, it's feeling good about yourself and feeling that you can do whatever you're trying to do, accomplish, whether it's baseball, whatever it may be. And I try to instill as a coach to build confidence, because I thought that was the key. And so if you're asked, how do you build confidence? I guess you have to have some success to build confidence initially. But as a job, as a coach, it's more of a mental thing than it is what we call mechanical flaws, because the head is what makes everything work. It's like the engine makes the car work. So I try to use that strategy as a coach. And I think it helped. I helped a few players in that regard by doing that.
You've been in the baseball world for a while, and the game has changed a lot since you played. What are your thoughts on how the MLB has changed over time? And do you have any strong feelings about some of the more recent changes, such as the expanded playoffs and pitch count?
Yes, I see a few changes that I don't particularly care about. I don't say that the players nowadays are not as good as the old timers, as the old timers used to say. They're better nowadays. They're stronger, they're faster. The only difference in the game today, they don't do the little things that we used to do, bunt, hit and run, squeeze. And it's all more about home runs, trying to hit home runs. So they don't advance runners like what we used to call giving up yourself to hit the ball on the right side of the infield to get a runner to third base. Those are the big things I see different in baseball. Because they were fans want home runs, so that's what they're trying to do.
Do you have any thoughts on more recent changes, such as the pitch clock?
No, because I never was in the game when they had that, but I think it's a good idea. I often wonder how true does the management really want that, because they're selling you drinks. If the game goes longer, you're buying more hamburgers, more hot dogs, and dates. So I'm not sure the owners want that, but I can see what the reason people come to the game at night and they're going home late, maybe had a couple of beers and all. So I understand to speed the game up and get them home quicker.
Did you have any exposure to high school baseball in Japan?
Yes, I did. I went to the famous high school tournament at Hankyu Stadium, where they have 100,000 people. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. With high school kids, with high school tournaments, that many people at a game to see a high school tournament. It's unbelievable. and the enthusiasm and all. It was a wonderful experience.
I know it's a tradition for players who go to the Koshien tournament to collect some dirt from the field. Did you ever take a memento like that from any of the fields?
No, I really didn't. I should have, but I didn't.
It sounds like your thoughts about baseball is that down deep, they're just one and the same. I mean, you play it in the US, you play in Japan, but it's simply baseball. Is that kind of an accurate way to describe how you feel about baseball in the US and Japan?
Yes, it is. Like I have two grandchildren that are playing ball, and I say the game is see the ball and hit it, catch the ball and throw it. That's the game, baseball. So that's the way I try to get them to look at it. See the ball, hit it, catch the ball and throw it. Instead of getting all these theories, we get too many theories into the game now. And I learned that as a coach. You don't want to build up too many theories in a person's mind because there's too many things to think about. It's not that difficult. You see the ball, hit it, and catch the ball and throw it, you know.
We have a couple of maybe final questions. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about Japanese players who come to the US today and have been succeeding. Players like Shohei Ohtani. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are about him.
Well, I tell you what, I scouted Ohtani when he came to us. I was still doing it. I went to see him play. And I've never seen anybody like that. He's got to be, nobody's ever close to him in the United States. Babe Ruth, you can talk about. I didn't see Babe Ruth play, but this kid, Ohtani, he's a potential Hall of Famer as a pitcher, a potential Hall of Famer as an everyday player. I've never heard of that or seen it over here. And the hitter, Ichiro, he is some kind of hitter. He's the best I've ever seen using the whole field. And he's probably has more tools than any Japanese player I ever saw come over there or here. He could run, he could throw, had a real good arm, he's a good fielder, good hitter, with a little bit of power. So he had all the abilities and he used them all. So those would be my two picks, Ohtani and him. Ichiro is the best I ever saw in a Japanese player.
You said you were scouting when you first saw Ohtani. Was that part of an organization?
No, I was retired. I'd been living close to Anaheim, and I went out to see him. I didn't see him in Japan, and I never did see Ichiro in Japan. I scouted Ichiro. When he's at Seattle, I was scouting Major League Ohtani. I just saw him going to a game, and I never seen anything like him. I thought.
It seems like the successful players, including Ohtani and Ichiro, who might be exceptionally superior, but in general, the Japanese players who do well in the US, all of them appear to be very well-rounded. Their fundamentals are very sound. And it seems like on average, their fundamentals are much better than an average American player. Is that an accurate way of putting it?
That is very accurate. That couldn't be more accurate. The Japanese are more fundamentally sound than we are over here, and more so now than ever. So yes, that's a very important thing you just brought
up. Over the offseason, the Dodgers signed Yoshinobu Yamamoto out of Japan. He's a pitcher. I think he's 25 years old, and I think he got a record-breaking contract. How do you feel about Japanese players coming over and getting such large contracts without having played in the MLB before?
More power to them. You know, it's human nature to get what you can, and if anybody wants to criticize that, if they criticize the owners for giving them that, you know, I've always said hey, they don't have to give them that kind of money. But if I'm a player, hey, I appreciate it and thank you very much.
All right. Well, I think any other questions, Riley and Sam?
I think so. Is there anything that you think we've forgotten to ask that you want to make sure you share with us about your time, or have we covered it all?
Tell you the truth, I've already remembered more than I thought I could. Being 93 years old, you know, I feel very blessed to be able to even talk to y'all and to remember some of these things.
Oh, that's amazing. Did you have like a favorite food when you were in Japan, in the ballpark, or in eating, you know, in a restaurant in Japan?
Well, sushi I was fond of, but I had to have a couple of drinks before I had sushi. But you know, I ate the steak they cook over the grill, and I like tempura was one of my favorites. And outside of the noodles, you know, I'd eat at the ballpark where they had what they call udon or noodles, and that was about it. What I'd eat at the ballpark. But outside of that, we go to very defined restaurants. At the steak restaurants, they had the best steak in the world. You know what they call Kobe beef, as you well know what that is, and the shrimp, what they call sushi. Sushi was a tuna that I wasn't particularly fond of. But I did have it now and then.
Did you have a favorite stadium to play in Japan?
Well, it was always the one I was in, really. You know, I enjoyed playing in Tokyo because it seemed like Tokyo was like the Yankees were over here. They were the big team, and so there was something special about their stadium that you felt as a player that you didn't feel in some other parks, if that's what you mean.
Is there a particular park in the US that you're fond of?
Probably Wrigley Field, where I coached. It is the smallest park in baseball, but it had a closeness to it, but being a small park and the fans were right there close. It had a very special feeling. That was my favorite park.
Well, I think we've fully exhausted our questions. Just such an exciting opportunity for us. I want to thank you so much for your time, and this has been absolutely fantastic.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. We really appreciate all the stories you were able to share. They were so fun to listen to.
Thank you very much, and the best to you in your education.